Welcome to our session today. The title of today's session is What are two of the greatest challenges that we face in church ministry? The answer is assimilation and integration. How are we supposed to involve people in the church and in ministry? Well, Jesus intended that new people would come into the kingdom of God and they would call it their home. What a wonderful idea. And we find this in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 19. Now this is the Message translation, and I love the way it says this. It says, "The kingdom of faith is now your home country. You're no longer strangers or outsiders. You belong here." Can you imagine if everyone who came in through our church doors had that feeling that they weren't strangers or outsiders, that they belonged there? Well, Jesus tells us in his final commission that we're to go into all the world, beginning in Judea and Samaria, to the uttermost parts of the world, and to make disciples and bring them into the kingdom of God. We're to do this through baptism, discipleship, and teaching. The first challenge we face is to assimilate the colorful. Sometimes we look at our church, we look at the people in our church, and we think they all look the same, sort of like our picture there on the right in the very first instance when it was all black and white. We look at them and we see that they all need spiritual guidance. They all want fellowship. They all demand attention. But as we get to know them a little better, we see that they begin to take on a color and a shape of their own. They're all unique. This is the challenge of assimilation, and this is what we call assimilation. So how do we make all the pieces fit together? This is challenge number 2. We have to integrate the unique. If you've been in ministry very long, you know that the people in our churches come in all kinds of sizes. They come in different levels of maturity. Everybody who walks through our doors has some different need from everybody else. Nobody has the same shape. Some of the needs that people have could be physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, maturity needs. Everybody's unique. But we all serve a purpose for being there. And when we put everybody together, we have this beautiful picture, and we call this integration. Now, how do we get to this point of integrating people? What is it that we all have in common? Well, first of all, we all have a call. If you think about it, everybody in our church has a call. Everybody that comes to our church has skills. Everybody in our church has something they're really passionate about. Of course, we know they all have spiritual gifts, and they all bring a bunch of experiences. And we all have these type things in common. But what is it that makes each of us different from all other believers? Well, what makes us different is our call, our specific call. There's not another person in the church who has the same call that you or I might have. In fact, your call is very different from mine. My skills are very different from your skills and everybody else in the churches. My passions also can't be found in any other person in the church. My spiritual gifts are my spiritual gifts. And finally, my experiences, our experiences, are different from everybody else's. Well, given our commonality and our uniqueness, how then can we approach assimilation? How do we assimilate all these really unique, wonderful people? Well, there are 4 biblical models that I'm going to show you that you should not follow, but you probably do, and you probably don't even realize it. You know, I've been in ministry about 35 years now, and I can look back over all those years and see where at some point in my ministerial life I've adopted one or more of these various models. So, you know, let's be real here, guys and ladies, if you're listening. We've all used them. Now let's find a way to get through them and get beyond them. The first model that I want to show you is the Elijah ministry model of assimilation. Now, you all remember Elijah. He had been a faithful servant of God, but at some point in his life, he was overcome with doubt and fear. And Elijah sought refuge for himself, and he found himself in a desert. And Elijah believed himself to be alone, even though God had already saved 1,000 other men just like himself. Elijah needed rest and support before returning to God's work. Now, if you've been in ministry long, you know people that come to your church that are just like Elijah. They might even have been another pastor or staff member somewhere, but they found their way to your church, and they're filled with doubt and fear. They're all alone. They need rest and support. They don't have to be a former staff member. Our churches are filled with people just like this. Many of our churches inadvertently find themselves in this ministry model. What am I talking about? Well, people visit our churches on a regular basis, but for some of these folks, they may as well just be in a desert under a juniper tree. They walk into our churches unannounced, and they end up sitting in a pew all alone. And in just a few short weeks of loneliness, if they're not interacted with, they move on to another church, or in the worst case scenario, they simply fall by the wayside. Well, guys, it's time to send in the ravens. Never let a stranger in your church. Now, I don't mean post armed guards at your doors and keep all the strangers and the weirdos out. I mean, never let a stranger in your church. You know what a stranger is. So we need to develop a well-trained guest services ministry that recognizes everybody and has a chance to interact with every person at every door, at every entrance of our buildings. Now, if you have 100 doors, then guess what? You need 100 guest services stations at each door. We need to develop well-trained ushers. Now, a lot of churches don't use ushers anymore, but you've been in ministry a long time. You remember ushers, those men, women who stand at the doors of your worship center or sanctuary, and they escort people to a pew. Maybe it's time to freshen up this idea and put some people there to help people find a good seat. And as you're doing that, make sure that they're not a stranger. Introduce yourself, get their name, find out a little bit about them. Another thing you can do is establish a pew or section greeter ministry. Now, this is something new that maybe you've never heard of before, but you assign people to areas of your worship center, and their whole job is to make sure that there are no strangers sitting in their section. Whether it's a pew or a group of chairs or a number of rows, however you want to do it, make sure that every person, by the time they get to that worship center, is no longer a stranger, that they already have been greeted. They've been given a welcome packet. Somebody knows their name, that somebody is reaching out to them, and we want them to know that we're interested in them, and we're grateful that they came to be part of our church service today. Now, the next model is the Noah's Ark model of assimilation. Boy, what a wonderful children's story. I've told this to my kids year after year. Thank goodness for Noah. Noah did exactly what God said. He's one of the few characters in Scripture that, for the most part, followed God from day one. He built it and the animals came. I love the movie Field of Dreams, and Kevin Costner has this famous line where he's talking to his wife and he says, "If I build it, they will come." He's talking about his baseball field. And in some respects, our churches are that way. If we build them, people come. Well, Noah prepared the animals for a long journey. While he was preparing them for the journey, he also prepared them for a new world, for a new way of life. What did he do? He fed them, cared for them, took care of them all the days that they were in the storms. But, and this is a big but, I probably should have capitalized that, he only took 2 of each kind of animal. So this is the key to our Noah's Ark model of assimilation. Some of our churches have a very, very few set of leaders that they can call on. Unfortunately, they use the same people over and over. It's limited to just a few key people in each area of ministry. What happens is we usually find some good leaders, some good strong teachers, some good strong ministry people, and we continue using them over and over, sometime decade after decade. In the very first church where I served as a minister of education, the lady who ran the children's ministry, the children's department, let me rephrase that, had been serving there for 40 years. And over those 40 years, she had seen basically the entire church come through her ministry, and she was a wonderful lady. I'm not putting her down. But at the end of her 40 years, when she decided she wasn't going to do this anymore, there was nobody prepared to take her place. She had done it all for 40 years. She had done it her way. And then the church found themselves in trouble because they hadn't prepared anybody to step in and take her place. There's no ability to bring in new people or to assimilate them into upcoming leadership roles. At some point, we have to realize that those folks we've counted on are going to die out. They may be transferred. They may move on into some other ministry somewhere. With no replacements or replacements that have little or no experience, we're going to find ourselves in trouble. So the Noah's Ark model of assimilation has a big problem. It simply doesn't allow for people to come into the system and be trained as potential leaders. So one of the things we're going to discuss in this session is the AIM assessments and the AIM matching modules that identify potential leaders and lead them into a proper ministry. One of the ways you can overcome this Noah's Ark model is to offer training opportunities throughout the year. A lot of our churches will have a big push for new Sunday school teachers or new discipleship leaders in the fall of the year, but then they don't offer any training opportunities throughout the year. So we need to develop opportunities so that everyone can get training throughout the year. Offer ministry internships. You know, we have a lot of new folks coming into our church, especially young married couples. Boy, what a great opportunity to give them a 3-month or a 6-month internship in some ministry within our church. Not necessarily a teaching ministry, but whatever ministry they might think they would be interested in. Not everybody knows where they want to serve when they first come to our church. And a lot of times it takes years of looking before you're matched to the right ministry. Now, we're going to offer you an opportunity to help cut that down, but one thing you can do is offer ministry internships. And then start a weaving ministry. Now, this is something you've probably never heard of because I just made it up. But can you see a weaver sitting in front of a loom and they're threading their shuttlecock back and forth and they're weaving this beautiful pattern? As church leaders, as ministers, we should be weaving new people into this ministry pattern that we have in our church, finding a way to introduce new members and new colors, new ideas, and new excitement. Well, the next one we want to look at is the Mr. Potato Head ministry model. Now, all of us have played with Mr. Potato Head probably as a child. This is the ultimate plug-and-play toy. It was a plug-and-play toy long before computers ever became plug-and-play. So what do we mean? Well, first of all, you can make it look like anything you want to make it look like. You can rearrange all the pieces. You can make him look serious or funny. If you don't like the way he looks, you can easily start over. Just unplug everything and stick them in new holes, because every piece fits every hole. The design is totally up to you. Now, this is a great toy, but it's a pretty lousy ministry model. And here's why. Every person does not fit every ministry task. You must take into account their skills and their desires when you're trying to fill ministry positions. Effective church ministry needs people who are filled with God's gifts and talents and are free to express them through the ministries to which they have been called. When you have to change a person from one position to another, a lot of times you can create a lack of desire and a sense of unfulfilled ministry. Poor Mr. Potato Head is not fearfully and wonderfully made. Look at him. He's got legs where his arms should go. He's got arms where his feet should go. He's got ears he's just all messed up. Is this a way for us really to design ministry? Well, of course not. Unlike Mr. Potato Head, we can't force people into wrong ministry holes. Not everybody is going to fit everywhere. Sometimes we need to realize that people will only fit one hole, and that's all they can do. Now, I have a story. It kind of breaks my heart, but my grandfather was a farmer in Missouri, and we would go visit him every other year because we lived so far away from them we couldn't make it every year. We had to go see the other grandparents who lived in New Mexico. But I remember my grandfather had two pair of overalls. One pair he wore during the week, Monday through Saturday, and he worked in the fields until he became disabled. But he kept one pair, and that was his Sunday overalls. And every Sunday we'd get up and he'd put on a clean white shirt and a tie and his Sunday overalls and a jacket. And we'd go off to the First Baptist Church. And when he got there, he always hoped that somebody would ask him to join the men and take up the offering. But in his entire life, he was never once asked to take the offering. And I know he suffered because of that. And he felt like he never quite fit in that church because the one thing that he felt called to do, take up the offering, was something he was never offered the opportunity to partake in. We need to realize that some people may only be suited for one task. Well, we should know that ultimately we should know what our church ministry needs to look like. We need to know all the ministries of our church and what kind of members it's going to take to run those ministries. And so I've skipped the screen here, but let me go back for just a second. Go back to Mr. Potato Head. So because we know what our ministry looks like, we need to know our members, and we need to know what they're capable of doing, and we need to make sure they're fitted properly into the ministry that our church is undertaking. Now we'll look at the assimilation ministry, the model of the Mount of Transfiguration. Well, we all remember this beautiful story of Jesus taking the disciples, but it was limited to just a few trusted disciples. In fact, only 1/4 of the disciples were actually able to participate in this event. For those 4, it was truly a life-changing experience. It allowed those participants to have a glimpse into a spiritual world that simply wasn't available to others. Now, they were intended to transmit this experience and to share it with others through their eyewitness, through their writings and their personal testimony. These were the most faithful of the disciples. Jesus, however, never intended for just a small percentage of his followers to be involved in ministry. He actually intended that everybody, all of his disciples, be involved in ministry and to have this unique experience. So churches and ministers have known for a long time that at best 20% of our people do 80% of the work. It's actually probably a much smaller percentage. I'm being very generous with this 20-80 percentage, but we've all heard this every seminar we've ever gone to. Our goal should be to involve as many people in this experience of ministry and leadership as possible. We should be exposing our people to life-changing experiences that they want to share with others. We need new people because new people bring excitement to established ministries. They bring new excitement through their new energy and their new ideas. So how do you overcome this Mount of Transfiguration ministry model? Well, get to know your people. Really understand who they are. You need to define a plan to involve all people in ministry. You need to train your leaders to develop potential within their groups. And finally, you need to encourage your people to adopt an openness policy. You know, you always hear kids complaining about, oh, there's too many cliques in my school. I can't get in with the popular kids. Well, unfortunately, it's the same way at many of our churches. We need to be open so that everybody can find a way, can have access into the ministry of the church. Keep your people moving outward. Nobody should stay in one place forever. By moving outward, I mean keep them moving into new ministry. Get them involved in the work of the church, in the work of ministry in the community. Well, we've looked at 4 models that weren't the best models to follow, but there is a better model. Thank goodness. Scripture's full of always better models. Now, this is the assimilation ministry, the model of 72. Now, you Bible scholars already guessed I was going to be turning to Luke chapter 10. And here's this scripture for you. After this, the Lord appointed 72 others, and he sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him into every town and place where he was about to go. He told them, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Go, I am sending you like lambs among wolves. Do not take a purse or a bag or sandals, and do not greet anybody on the road. But when you enter a house, first say, peace to this house. If someone who promotes peace is there, your peace will rest on them. If not, it will return to you. Stay there eating and drinking whatever they give you, for the worker deserves his wages, and do not move from house to house. It continues on there. So when we talk about this model of the 72, what are we really talking about? Well, Jesus sent out 72 people whom he had personally equipped, taught, blessed, and sent. Keep that in mind because it's important. These are people that had personalized training. The 72 people were both men and women, young and old, but they were prepared in every way to do ministry. He had encouraged them and taught them. He had spent a lot of time with them. So when we're looking at developing our ministry model in our churches, we need to realize that it's going to take personal involvement. That even if you have great assessment tools, just filling out an assessment and sticking somebody in ministry isn't going to cut it. We've got to know these people inside out, almost as good as they know themselves. We've got to then equip them, we've got to teach them, and then bless them and send them. Well, they were equipped with knowledge that they had learned from the Master. So in our ministries, they need to be equipped. They need knowledge. We need to be prepared to teach. Jesus poured himself into them, and they understood their role in the message that they were about to preach. They were given power to minister, and they were given freedom to minister. When you look at that scripture, Jesus said, hey, do what comes natural. Do what is given to you. Live where you're welcome and serve those that welcome you. Well, there are 6 factors that make assimilation and integration work. One is access. Access to knowledge, access to information. We need to be able to compare the information that we have to work with and digest it. We need to analyze it. We need to then train our people, and then we need to send our people. So do you know how to do this? Do you know how to go about that? Well, if you did, you'd probably be teaching this seminar. Now, I'm sure we've all done assimilation in our churches, and we've done a good job. But let's look at some tools that are currently available. So the question is, do you use assessment tools? Well, there are a lot of good ones out there. But does the information you have give you specific ideas and recommendations on how to use your people? That's going to be important. Jesus knew his people. So look at Jesus told Peter and Andrew that they knew how to fish, but that if they would follow him, he would make them master fishermen, and more importantly, fishers of men. What do you know, and how is God and your church going to use your people? What do you know about your people? How is God going to use them? Well, a lot of times we find people who say, I know my gifts, my passions, my experiences, and more. Is that enough, or is there more to it? Well, let's do a side-by-side comparison. With popular programs like Shape and Place, Uniquely You, and the DISC profile, and then we're going to compare them with the reason we're here today, and that's to look at the AIM Ministry Profile Management Software. That's a big long name. We're just going to call it AIM. First of all, in these popular programs on the left, each one of them has a spiritual gifts assessment. Each of them has some sort of passions assessment or experience assessment. They each can help you identify your personality traits, and you get to learn what your abilities are. At the end, you have a printed summary, and that's called your ministry profile. And that's what you get. Now, those are all important tools. So let's look at the AIM profile. Well, first of all, items 1 through 6 are exactly the same. You're offered a spiritual gifts profile, passions, experience, personality, abilities, and you get a printed ministry profile. But when you look at your passions, you're able to choose from 208 passions. When you look at your skills, the AIM profile will assess 173 skills. And you're able to choose from over 299 vocations, which is part of your experience. You can retake the profile as often as you like, unlike the others where you have to sit down and pay for another copy and do it. The AIM profile is available 24 hours a day because it's located on a cloud server. And by that, it means you go to a secure website. Every person is given a username and password, and you log into the software. Well, you can share your profile once you develop it with your denomination or your association or other groups, depending on your sharing preferences. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, a lot of times a church may be too small to offer a ministry that that you would like to be involved in. Every church doesn't need a clothes closet. Your association or your conference or your local county ministerial association may have one clothes closet, and each church can provide ministers. So we provide an opportunity for people to share their profile with ministries that are not necessarily tied to your church, but are tied to your organizations. And so when you log into the software, this is what you see. It is a screen that welcomes you. It gives you instructions on how to proceed, and then offers you the 4 assessments: the skills assessment, passions, your vocational and spiritual gifts assessment. Now, this profile can be accessed from any computer, any laptop, any tablet, or even any smartphone. So the AIM ministry software then takes and offers something that nobody else offers. Once you take the assessment, the computer will analyze that and match each of your members to dozens of possible ministry opportunities based on the score in their skills, passions, vocations, and gifts. And each person will get a personalized printout of all the possible ministry matches. Now, this is something you've never seen before, and that is this resource manual, and there's a sample of the printout that you would get, and it shows your score, it shows your ranking in the various ministry opportunities. The AIM ministry profile, here we go, allows the church and the staff to print as many profiles as you like. There's no additional cost. You can easily sort by any field, which means you could search for people with certain skills or certain passions. Never before have you been able to do that and say, let's assume your church has completed the profile for every member. Now, that's going to take a lot of work, but just for argument's sake, once it's completed, wouldn't it be great if you could sit down at your computer and say, hey, could you print me a list of everybody that knows how to play the piano? Could you print me a list of everybody that knows how to speak French? Could you print me a list of everybody that likes to ride motorcycles? Because we want to start a motorcycle ministry. You could ask the church secretary, could you print me a list of every woman between the ages of that's over 18 who likes to cook, um, who has a passion for helping the poor, who has the spiritual gifts of mercy, and has a vocational background that includes teaching or restaurant work or um, working in a school of some kind. Well, you could print that report. What a great idea. Maybe you just want to search for men or women or just youth or adults. You want to search by languages spoken or professional licenses held. AIM is the only software program that allows you to search on literally thousands of combinations of skills, passions, gifts, uh, experience, licenses, languages, so on and so forth. Now, how are you going to use this? Well, you might use it with your nominating or selection committee. I know a lot of people don't like the word committee anymore, but however you help people get involved in ministry, just substitute your word. This would be an excellent tool for your deacons or your elders to use as they minister to their families to help find out where a family might get plugged in, especially if you're talking to new families that have just joined the church. It's available to your staff and your leadership. It's easily adaptable to new members' classes or assimilation ministries. And the software can be personalized for your church. Now here's a side-by-side comparison. We'll let you look at that for just a moment. First of all, the fee for using this software is based on your church size and not the number of people taking the assessment. Unlike some of the others, that's $8, $9, $10 per person. This software reduces the cost to under $1 a person. There's no charge to take the assessment over and over. If your people have changes in their life, feel like they want to retake it for some reason, they can take it at no additional cost. There's personalized training available to your church. You can access our trainers via Skype or some other group calling situation. You can use this software, and it's constantly being updated as new ministries are added, new passions are added, new skills or vocations are added. Your members' profiles are going to be automatically updated. Now, fortunately, we're not going to have to update the spiritual gifts. Those are pretty well set by Scripture, so you won't see any changes there. But you will see changes in things as technology evolves. Since we started this project, we've had to add YouTube and Twitter and Pinterest as passions because they didn't exist when we started this process 7 years ago. So you can just look there and see the differences between the 4 profiles that we have selected. Well, what is really unique about this software? And that's the ability to match people to opportunities. So hopefully you've stuck with us this long. This has been a long seminar. I understand we're coming up on 35 minutes. But this is what makes AIM really unique, and that's the ministry match. Once the assessments are complete, you will have a screen appear like this one, and it lists the top 10 matches based on a database of 250 ministry opportunities, and all the cross references have been made. So now this is just a made up result here, but you can just kind of see that this person, their top match, their ranked number 1 is the single adult ministry. They matched 8 skills, 15 passions, 3 vocational backgrounds matched this one, and 6 spiritual gifts matched it. And you can just go down the list and see some of the type ministries that are available. You can hit the print button and get a printed copy of this once you log into the screen. So here are some of our ministry pages. They can be found in our resource manual. They're also available when you take the assessments online and you get your ministry matches. You can print each one of these out as a PDF. You can see we've chosen women's ministry as just an example, but for every ministry there's a scriptural authority, some biblical basis for this type ministry. You'll see the synopsis, usually just a paragraph, something brief, and then we list all the passions that might be useful in this ministry, the gifts that would be useful in this ministry. We list any professions that might have some special training that would be useful in this ministry, how to implement this ministry. And then on the back page, we would introduce you to the skills. And again, there's 9 categories of skills that have been measured and cross-referenced, and 173 different skills are built into the database. So what are these ministries that I keep talking about? Well, ministries fall within 9 categories. There's a sample of our 3-ring notebook, and these categories of ministry are administrative ministries, Christian life ministries, church growth ministries, discipleship and training ministries, evangelism ministries, family life ministries, helps ministries, missions ministries, and finally music and worship ministries. So let's look at the administrative ministries very quickly. And here's just a well, it's not a sampling. This is the complete list of the ministries that fall within the administrative category. And we're just going to kind of go through some of these. You can get a printout of this if you'd like, and you can look at some of these ministries. The resource manual is a great tool because you may just want to buy the resource manual just to get some ideas of how to begin a particular kind of ministry. Here's one that a friend of mine recommended is the ice cream truck ministry. Dr. Stan Albright, some of you may remember him when he was with the North American Mission Board. That ministry came from him. We've included a lot of ministries that have come from friends in ministry. You can see there's quite a few here, and every ministry comes with a PDF document. You can download those, or like I said, they're available in the resource manual. So to get started, first of all, make sure that you get all your questions answered. We've gone through a lot of material here in the last 45 minutes or so. So if you have questions, there's our phone number. You can call us. You can go to our website and find many of your questions will be answered there. Call us if you need an introductory presentation for your staff or leadership. We'd love to come visit with you either in person, on Skype, or on a webinar. You got to get your staff on board. If you're a pastor, you need your ministry of education, your assimilation people, your deacons, your Sunday school leadership, your discipleship training people, your missions people. Everybody needs on board to implement the AIM ministry throughout your church. Then you need to determine the cost of your license. Now, if you have been doing this long, you realize the cost can get quite expensive for some programs. But we want to make this available to everybody. So first of all, if you're a church and your average attendance is under 100, you can sign up for this program for free. I can't charge you in good faith. I want you to grow. I want you to develop ministers. When you start growing, then if you want to buy a license, then please do. But we think our fees are very fair for what we offer to you. If you run between 101 and 250 people on an average Sunday, your entire fee for the whole year is $175 a year. Sign up everybody in your church. So if all 250 people use the software, it's considerably less than $1 a person. If your church has an average attendance of between 251 and 500 people, the fee is only $450 a year. And you can just keep going up. Once you get to a church that's over 3,000, then for every additional 1,000 members, the fee goes up by $500. So we want you to order a subscription. You can do that from our website. There's links for churches to do that. You can purchase the paper supplies. In my church, some of our older members don't like to use computers. They're afraid of security. They want a pen and paper profile. Fine, we have those available. You can order as many copies as you want. They can take all 4 assessments on paper. Somebody's still going to have to score it, probably put it into the system so you can get the printout, but those resources are available. And you can call us and we'll customize the software for you. Now I have a special offer for you. Since you've listened to the whole program, it's now 41 minutes. Thank you for watching. We've got a 3-pack that I'd like to offer to you just for watching this today, and that's the resource manual, which lists all 250 ministry opportunities. Then there's a training program. It's about a 50-page long manual, and you can use that in your own church to train the people. And then, as I said, there's the assessment pack in the back, where people, if they don't want to use the computer, they can fill the assessments out and get all 4 assessments in paper. Now this is normally a $99 package, but we're going to give you a 25% discount if you use the discount code VIDEO. So when you go to the website, order the intro pack and use the video code, and you will receive, it'll take 25% off of your subscription to the printed materials. Now we can't give you a discount off of the subscription fee to the software. That's pretty well set, as low as we can take it at this point. But the printed materials, that's our gift to you. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this today. Please give me a call if you have additional questions. I'm going to put the screen back up once again that has our phone number on it. And there it is at the bottom, 347-871-6090, or you can go to our website at aiministry.com. Thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you listening. Hope you learned a little bit, and please call me.